So we sort of have a game. We have like half a game. So the layout's a little bit different because I do have to keep an eye out for Zeal, our mainstream actually getting started. So we are going to get started here with Hand of Mine versus Daiguren Rise. It looks to be a Sejuani. Generally we see Ember Maiden in Sejuani decks, and it looks like Karina Control on the side of Hand of Mine. Sorry, still getting some things figured out on the production side of things. But yeah, going to be the double Mystic Shot. That's actually pretty big. Generally, we see things like Take Heart onto those, sort of take over a game. And Hand of Mine's hand, a little weak here. There's a good chance we actually see a Thermo Beam just fired off onto this. Not the ideal target, but just wanting to maintain the tempo. Not sure that it was entirely necessary, but players do tend to just not be okay with taking turns of inaction when their opponents have turns of action. So we do see the Thermo Beam fired off there by Hand of Mine. Oopsie. Vi now challenging out this unit, just getting that cleaned up, no problemo, easy peasy, just another day at the office for Vi. As I previously mentioned, one of the, just easily one of the best champions in the set. Oh, and then the Noxian Guillotine coming down, take out the Vi straight away. Seems weird that it looked like Hand of Mine's other Vi powered up when Vi died. Ruthless Raider coming down, it's almost certainly just going to get killed by the second Vi. Yeah, it is at 3 attack. Of course, 2 would be enough to take this out. A lot of health buffs you have to be wary of in this matchup, though. Oh, and the Culling Strike coming down, actually. No 1 mana fast spell out of Hand of Mine does mean that that is going to take it out. Now Hand of Mine is actually a little bit on the back foot. Going to be in an okay spot. The Plunder gaining a mana crystal for Daiguren Rise. But it's not enough damage to really make Hand of Mine feel super threatened. There is a Grasp coming out now onto this. Nope, gonna put that one back, just pass. Does understand that there are bigger threats that could come out this turn and doesn't want to tap himself out of Thermo Beam mana. Can just throw out the Grasp now, and then you're set up on turn 9 for a couple of Karina Varazas to come down back to back. Yeah, and Hand of Mine hanging on to a 17 life total. That's extremely high, but now the Leviathan comes down. And Leviathan Swain is something that I've actually seen win single-handedly, more or less, win a lot of Karina matchups. The Leviathan is actually very difficult for the deck to deal with. Vengeance and Thermo Beam really the only answers to it. And the same can be said of upgraded Swain. Just such healthy units that make such a devastating combo, sort of canceling out the Ladros plays and things of that nature. Might see the Karina Varaza come down and see what she can get done. This Swain only at 3 out of 12, so a long way off evolution. Is actually really good for Hand of Mine, though. Swain can get upgraded extremely quickly. All it takes is and it's just going to be the pass from Daiguren Rise actually playing beautifully around the Ruination that we do see in Hand of Mine's hand. And he does not have a good answer for this 8 damage coming at his face. You can throw all the Withering Wills you want at this Ruthless Raider because it is tough. It will not actually get the job done. And the pass back from Daiguren Rise actually plays really poorly for Hand of Mine. Just not taking the proactive approach that it kind of feel like he needed to. And now he's in a really rough spot. 6 life is not a lot. You could take down this Leviathan, but it's just going to pass again. And I don't think Daiguren Rise is going to really feel pressured to play anything here yet. It's just going to pass it back. And now Hand of Mine potentially is just dead to something like a Noxian Fervor. Karina Varaza going to come down. Yeah, there's a lot of stumbling from Hand of Mine here in the later turns. Just going into turn 11, I believe, and has not been able to play a 9-drop yet. Is 2 turns missed on it, just trying to find a good time to Ruination, but Daiguren Rise not falling for it. The Vengeance finally picked up, and Hand of Mine does have to either kill this Leviathan or gain some life this turn. Karina into Thermo Beam could get it done. Is a little bit risky, but does, of course, leave you susceptible to something like the Noxian Fervor. Still going to be susceptible to it, though, as we're likely to see a Swain come down here, which will force some activity. Oh, Ember Maiden, even. Now, I'm not 100% sure if there are Noxian Fervors in Dagger and Rise's deck. It is seldom that we see a Swain deck without it, though. And because this Ruthless Raider will survive the Ember Maiden, we are going to see the Withering Wail thrown out here. This could be the end of game 1 for Hand of Mine. Oh, not going to be the case. Is going to gain his life. The second Ruthless Raider, I think, actually will do it. Static Shock cannot clean those up. And surprisingly enough, a 1 health tough unit is all it takes to end the game here. We could even see the Swain come down as well. Hand of Mine is tapped out. Yeah, absolutely. No reason not to throw that one down. I know the Swain seems very far off evolution. I think part of that is that the Scar Maiden does give a lot of power into the Swain Evolve, since she does deal 1 to the entire board. And we see the Swain evolution. Another one of my favorite evolutions. If you've seen my YouTube intro, it's the Swain evolution into the Jinx, the Vi evolution. Those are just 2 really cool looking evolutions in my opinion. Big fan of those. So even though it always feels a little BM to me when the game ends and then the champion evolution still has to play out. It's like, come on, Riot, let me just pack up my stuff and go home. I've had enough for today. All right, while these players get into game 2, I actually am just going to... It looks like our primary stream isn't going to be happening, so I do just want to actually, like, full screen this. The players are not in the game yet. Oh, trying to unpop this out. It's not working. I can't unpop it. Okay, there we go. Alright, it looks like a Karina Peraza Mirror from Dagger and Rise and Hand of Mine. This is a play that a lot of players... Okay, so Commander Ladros, I think, is an absolutely pivotal keep in the Karina Mirror. If you've heard me cast before, I really hone in on the fact that Commander Ladros on 9 is definitely the best way to win the mirror. You could go for the aggressive start and try to spider out your opponent with the Elises and the Brood Awakenings, but I don't think it's a very consistent way to win the game. I do think that keeping Ladros in your opening hand rather than going for the Brood Awakening package of your own. And we did see Hand of Mine keep Withering Wail as well, being very cognizant of the Brood Awakening plan. Here we are going to see him get rewarded for it. So Dagger and Rise is like, okay, the Spider plan is my way to win this game. Hand of Mine said the Ladros keep is how I win this game. Both players just kind of playing it out as you would expect. Unfortunately for Dagger and Rise, did not find the Elise on 2. Actually, could have had the Elise on 2 and chosen not to play it to get out the Brood Awakening on 3. That's pretty reasonable when you have the Brood Awakening, or when you have the attack token on 3, rather, because it pushes through twice as much damage. Now we do see an Elise picked up from Hand of Mine, but could fire off the Progress Day this turn instead, would overdraw him, so probably not going to be the play, but he doesn't have a good answer for this Vi. Could just pass and play the Elise post-combat. Ooh, the Progress Day... Overdrawing's not the biggest deal in the world, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. It's definitely not great to lose out on that inherent +1 that you get. Okay, I think we actually are going to see it. Okay, yeah, we're definitely... Okay. I was going to say we're definitely going to see a 0-mana Thermo Beam fired out. Because Thermo Beam's not a card that gets a lot of value in this matchup. Vi is really the only primo target for it. And since you do have the Vengeance, let's see what he burns. Brood Awakening. Okay, that's not a bad burn. You can just throw out your... Okay, we're not throwing out our Thermo Beam. I think... I mean, Thermo Beam seems like a pretty obvious play. The only setup that really punishes you for this is like another Vi. Elise into Brood Awakening upgrades the Elise, but you have the Withering Wail and the Mystic Shot to take that out. So I do like the Thermo Beam onto the Vi. Here we see the Elise. If there is a Brood Awakening, Hand of Mine has a 2-card answer to this as well. Oh, and instead just going to be the 1-mana Static Shock, Dagger and Rise, just cycling through the deck. You can definitely feel the desperation in a play like this if your opponent doesn't have the Ladros already. That is really just the one thing that you are constantly searching for, is the ability to get a turn 9 Commander Ladros. And then from there, you kind of go, who has more Ledros? Because if both of you are sitting there and stalemating your Ledrosses because, say, you have more burn or you have less burn in your hand than you think your opponent would, you actually see the gotcha come out to deny the life from the Grasp of the Undying. And there'll be a Vile Feast onto the 1/1 Hovered, and not going to let that happen. And instead, probably just going to develop his own Elise. Start to push back some damage as well, make his own Ledros more impactful. And we're actually seeing Hand of Mine play extremely on curve so far. Is going to want to bank some spell mana going into this Ledros turn if he can. It's not the most important thing in the world. There's no spell that you actually really care about getting down the same turn as the Ledros. And we're seeing Dagger and Rise do a pretty good job of keeping control of the board, even throwing away a gotcha onto the Elise. Still has the backup top deck gotcha to deal with the Elise out of Hand of Mine. Now a Brood Awakening picked up. It seems like a pretty reasonable fire off. There's nothing else that you're doing with this turn. It does bank the 3 spell mana going forward, which is very valuable. Not so much on turn 9, but on the forward turns where you're only banking 1 spell mana. And that was one of the big things that I had taken an issue with when Ledros was first really starting to pop up into the format, was that at 8 mana, constantly playing him turn after turn, it was too easy to bank spell mana, which is why I like his 9 cost a lot more. And we see a Vile Feast coming out onto one of the 2/1s. Pretty reasonable. The board stalemated here. Of course, Hand of Mines do have more attack. Not that that makes much of a difference. They still can't block Commander Ledros. They're a little bit useless, more or less. And yeah, I think this attack is very reasonable. I think Dagger and Rise is even going to be fine just to block these and not really care. Or firing off the first Withering Wail of the game. It's a little tough to decide because you do want to hang on to that healing until after the Ledrosses start to come down. It's a little awkward because you can't Ledros and Withering Wail in the same turn, which is another big thing. Back when Karina was like the hot new thing and Ledros was still only 8 mana, Grasp of the Undying and Withering Wail could come out in the same turn as him. That might not have even actually been... I don't necessarily know that Ledros was meta, or like Karina rather was the meta for Ledros at the time. I know that there were some spooky Karma decks and things of that nature. But there were definitely decks that were playing Ledros and Withering Wail and Grasp of the Undying. It's more the point that I was going for, and the fact that you could play them in the same turn with the Ledros made him really not feel like the commitment that he currently does. So I think that was a great change from the design team of Legends of Runeterra. Now, Hand of Mine hanging onto the card advantage and has the Atrocity and the Mystic Shot. So this first Ledros actually could end the game for Hand of Mine. And with 10 mana, actually with 11 mana specifically, so with the mana that he has banked, it's not impossible let me put it this way. So on turn 9, Hand of Mine is not going to bank any spell mana. And then on turn 10, he's going to go to 11. Okay, yeah, no, never mind. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought he could I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know why I'm talking so fast and trying to get this out. It's really not that important of a play. But if Hand of Mine plays Ledros, and then Dagger and Rise responds with Ledros, and then neither of them attack, then Hand of Mine can Vengeance Ledros, Dagger and Rise can replay it, and then Hand of Mine can Thermo Beam it, and then push through 9 damage. Is the play that I was trying to talk about, and it doesn't even work because you need 12 mana for that play, and because Hand of Mine isn't banking 1 spell mana this turn because Ledros is getting played on curve, it's nowhere near as impactful. You definitely want this to come down before your Karina comes down. And it's kind of weird to see that Dagger and Rise, all the work that he did in the early game to pressure Hand of Mine's life total is sort of invalidated once these Ledrosses start coming down. He does have a 2 life advantage, which isn't nothing. It's not much. It's going to continue to lower. 2 Ledrosses from now, the players will actually be even. But the 7 does mean that Hand of Mine is going to go down to 3. And Dagger and Rise has mana for a Get Excited. Could just end the game this turn. As Hand of Mine playing the Ledros does mean that he is out of mana for something like a Grasp of the Undying or a Withering Wail. Dagger and Rise. If he has the... I actually don't like this attack, if I'm being totally honest. Just because Hand of Mine does have Atrocity and doesn't have the burn in hand to get through the 5 life total regardless. Because the mana advantage is solely on the side of Dagger and Rise, the only real punish that Hand of Mine would have for a Get Excited would be a Vile Feast. Of course, doesn't have it. Looks like we might even fire Mystic Shot off onto the Spider since Dagger and Rise's Ledros does represent lethal. I'd rather see the Thermo Beam onto the Spider, rather than the Mystic Shot, since Mystic Shot does represent lethal next turn for Hand of Mine. But not if he plays the Thermo Beam. Okay, we see a second Commander Ladros coming down for Dagger and Rise. The fact that these players have been trading them back and forth does mean that the single Ladros for Hand of Mine is technically better than the double out of Dagger and Rise, because he just has more cards that aren't named Commander Ladros. And I think we're going to see Hand of Mine go for a Karina Veraza here. Oh, Vengeance coming down onto the Commander Ledros. So we know he doesn't have Get Excited. Mystic Shot still on the table as a lethal option. We see Withering Wail come out to guarantee the life gain, as well as just take out the 1/1 Spider so that it doesn't represent lethal itself. And we importantly see the Withering Wail come out before the Ladros goes off, because this plays around Mystic Shot a lot better. Oh, but double Mystic Shot. Or maybe Grasp of the Undying? Nope. Or, sorry, Gloom's Beyond. No, it is double Mystic Shot. Okay. So that's going to be Dagger and Rise, picking that one up 2-0. Didn't have the Get Excited, but did have the burn. And we are going to get into one of our backup stream games, because we actually have those. Alright, we are going to be hopping into Gratcher's game. Now, the reason that I'm picking Gratcher here, and it's likely that we'll see Gratcher again next round, is because Gratcher is playing against Dayspring, who I had tried to get on stream earlier, but Dayspring's stream was really laggy, so we are going to get to see it from the other side. Dayspring on Sea Monsters, Gratcher on that Piltover Zon Freljord deck from earlier, the Frostbite Ezreal. Taking out a Maokai, that's a good way to come into the stream. Vi getting it done. Cannot overstate how good Vi is and how much I think she is going to get impacted on the balance change that we should get the patch notes for on Monday. But the Maokai replacement, not sure how close this is to leveling up. Since Dayspring is deep, I would have to imagine Maokai is pretty close. Though Gratcher does have the tools to kill through this Ezreal. 22 out of 25. Okay, so the Ezreal actually is upgraded. There's not much in a Sea Monster deck that can threaten a upgraded Ezreal. There is, of course, Devourer of the Depths. Grasp of the Undying comes off the table. Vengeance isn't a card that we typically see out of these. Maybe one copy. But Devourer of the Depths is the one that you have to be worried about. And Gratcher actually has a lot of burst spells that he can fire off, even if the Ezreal does go down, which it looks like it will. But there's a lot of drawing to be done for Gratcher, and as long as he can push 3 damage onto this Devourer of the Depths, we're actually not going to see the Ezreal go down. And this does put the Maokai 1 away from the upgrade, which I believe does mean that once this sapling dies, the Maokai will fully upgrade. Gratcher finds the gotcha. Okay, so gotcha is going to save Ezreal here, which is extremely important. Because there are going to be no more Ezreal's deck, or no more Ezreals in Gratcher's deck once this sapling dies. Ooh, but the Withering Wail going to keep Ezreal below the Devourer's health total. Vi's Vault Breaker doesn't do anything here. And this will be the Ezreal getting cleaned up. I think it's very important not to fire off the Vault Breaker here. The damage doesn't make too much of a difference. The main thing that you want is you want additional copies of Vi shuffled into your deck once this Maokai upgrades at end of turn. So now there are no more Ezreals in the deck of Gratcher, as previously harped upon, because it's extremely important to realize that that is not an out he can play to any longer. It is going to be up to Vi to take over this game. And this Progress Day, now a completely useless card. Gratcher's not actually in any danger of decking out anytime soon, as he does have the 2 Vi's Vault Breakers. Can get 2 more Vi into his deck. And Dayspring actually has to be cognizant of his own deck total since there are 2 Chump Wumps in Gratcher's hand. Ooh, Grasp of the Undying onto the Vi, going to prevent the upgrade. There is still mana for Gratcher to get down another Vi and still play the Vault Breaker. Still, once again, not really in any danger of decking out. Is going to go ahead and scoop it up, though. Understands that the Vi upgrade is his best chance for winning this game. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen if this Vi dies to this Grasp of the Undying. So, going to check the game count here in a second once he hits that continue button. It is 2-0 Dayspring. Okay, moving on to our last backup stream. We're back with Argzino, playing against Void, as I had previously mentioned. This is that Bilgewater Pirate Undying Sheriff deck that I had mentioned. So kind of excited to see this. Argzino once again allowed to play the Vi-Heimer. This is a deck that we consistently see target, like, if you see your opponent is running Vi-Heimer, that is typically a snap ban. But I believe this is the 4th round in a row Argzino has been allowed to play it. Argzino has a very wide board. Vulnerable onto the Heimerdinger is concerning, which I guess is why NLP Void was fine letting the deck go. Can just take out this Heimerdinger with Undyings. We see a little bit of protection in Argzino's hand for that specific case. Pushing through a fair amount of damage here. And the Progress Day in his hand does represent a second Heimerdinger, as there are no... This is interesting to me. I feel like it would have been... I feel like rather than saving the vulnerable T-Hex, I much rather would have fired off the backup Heimerdinger Progress Day, gotten a new T-Hex, and then saved my Twin Disciplines to save the Heimerdinger, rather than just getting down the new Heimerdinger. Looks like we'll be a Ritual of Renewal. Likely going to go over the 2-1, as this is going to be an 8-2 with Barrier. Ooh, and Spirit's Refuge picked up. That'll protect the Heimer. That's actually really good for Argzino, as it gives him a replacement T-Hex, as well as lets him fire off the Progress Day. And I do think this Progress Day is pretty important to get off here. You see another Sheriff Lariat Rose come down, grant everything vulnerable. And Void's at a pretty high life total. These Elusive's going to get traded off by the Undyings, and this is why I liked this in theory. We've seen Unguard come out of Demacia championless Undyings in the past, and Lariat Rose doing that a little bit better, as it is sort of... it's sort of on guard on a body, and a pretty well-statted body at that rate, but it also doesn't only last for a turn. So I would like to see protection onto the Heimer here, followed by the Progress Day. I don't think Argzino has enough spells to actually continue on with just the Heimerdinger he has. I think he needs to draw a few more cards. He has protection for the Heimer. It's possible he's going to overvalue one of these other units. Yeah, going to throw the Lifesteal Barrier down onto his other turret. The Floor Begone. Reconsidering. Gonna buff up the health of the Heimer first. The Progress Day doesn't have to happen this turn. If he wants to Spirit's Refuge to save something else, I think that's fine, but I really think that most of the power in the Heimerdinger deck is just how much refuel you have. You're fine just trading off your units with your opponent. You know, this Undying is going to go up to a 5-5, but it can't block, so what do you really care? Lariat Rose is going to block out your T-Hex. This is going to give him a lot of life, but I don't know how valuable that is. I think it's fine to just replace the T-Hex instead of hanging on to this old busted one. Stuck at 3 health, that's an old busted T-Hex. I don't want that one anymore. Looks like Argzino, even if he wants to do it, is going to be out of time. Is going to get forced into the Progress Day turn forced into the Progress Day play this turn. But because he did play a Burst Spell on the Heimer, NLP Void is going to have a chance to do something before the attacks are finalized. It's just going to finalize with Heimer going down to 2 HP. Very much love to see this Progress Day fired off. I have to imagine that even if this is a kill spell aimed at the Heimer... Well, if it's a kill spell aimed at the Heimer, then I don't hate the Spirit's Refuge. And we can Progress Day next turn. but I think I would rather get this progress day off and lose my Heimer than play another Heimer when my hand is only get excited.
Yes, yes, again!
I think if we see a second kill spell on the Heimer here, that'd be disastrous for our Xeno. But not going to be the case. Oh, and Flash of Brilliance, a great pickup.
Stand down.
It's going to be 12 damage pushed through. So the Flash of Brilliance come out. No reason for Dawn and Dusk to get played. Ethereal Remitter onto an Undying. Ooh, been a while since I've seen this man, whose name escapes me. It's a Volt something. Okay, we do see the progress they fired off. Shadow Assassin, Vi, Solitary Monk. Got a lot of good targets for this get excited to discard. Solitary Monk seeming like the most likely. I don't think you're ever losing control of the board at this point. Orbicon coming down, and LP Void going to continue to pass back. We will see Get Excited discarding the Solitary Monk onto the face. Lock that one in, and what do we get? Looks like a GG from Void. And we'll check game count here in a second. Calculated. Okay, 2-0 Arc Xeno, moving on to the 4-0 bracket. So, that is all of our backup streams. I think we actually got a chance to check out all of them.